So this is the second of your video lectures on the muscular system, and we're going to look at muscle fiber types this time. Okay, so there's three muscle fiber types in the body. So you've got type 1, which is also known as the slow oxidative muscle fiber. You've got type 2A, which is fast oxidative glycolytic, and then you've got type 2B, which is fast glycolytic. You can tell by their names what they do. So obviously type 1 is a slow twitch. Type 2 and A and type 2B are both called fast twitch, so it's in the names. However, fast oxidative glycolytic is in the middle of the two. So the type 2A is kind of like a hybrid cell, which means there's a little bit of type 1 and a little bit of type 2B. I really like these images. They show them really well. So if you want to do an endurance type activity, the biggest part of the pyramid here is the slow twitch muscles. The oxidative is the type 1. That's what you're mainly going to recruit and mainly need. Next one is the 2A, so fast oxidative glycolytic, and the last one you need in endurance, the fast glycolytic. And it's just a reverse here, so I've done the pyramid going down this time. So you've got your fast glycolytic at the top, which are your type 2Bs for power. And then so on, you've got your fast oxidative glycolytic, which is 2A in the middle again, and your type 1, which is your oxidative. That's the one you're going to use least for power or strength. So muscle fiber type is mostly based on genetics. So if you think about the 100 meters final, for example, in the Olympics, if you think about genetics, it is mostly black athletes in the final. That is because if you look at the genetics, they will have mostly type 2B muscle fiber types. Like I said, it's based on genetics, what you're going to get. So basically, your muscle fiber type distribution is kind of set, predetermined, although you can train to help develop your muscle fiber types to make them much stronger. So specific training can do that. So hill sprints will be really good for fast glycolytic. Something like fartlek training would be really good for your type 1 muscle fiber types, for example. However, if you don't train, so detraining, it can result in a loss of any progress made. So, for example, your fast oxidative glycolytic can return back to oxidative. So, this was a task we did in class. I wanted to know what fiber type would be used by the athletes more here. So we'll look at the easy ones first. So a marathon runner is going to use a type 1. However, if you think about a marathon runner's sprint finish, they're going to need type 2 because that's a powerful movement they need to do. Sprint is obvious, they're going to need type 2. They're going to need the fast glycolytic fibers because it's over in seconds. Same as discus thrower, they're going to need the power muscle fiber, so the type 2. Now, football and badminton is a little bit trickier. So you think about badminton's got a lot of power movements involved. So like a smash, jumping up for a smash, you're going to need type 2B. However, if you're in a really long rally, so say like a 20 hit rally, 30 hit rally, there's a little bit of endurance involved. So even though it's a power sport, there's a bit of endurance involved. So you're probably going to lean a lot more towards a type 2A for badminton because of that, because it's got a little bit of endurance in the fiber type. Now the footballer is another interesting one. So the games last in 90 minutes. So they're probably going to need a good type 1 muscle fiber. You see when people get substituted on games, they've normally done about 10 kilometers. Now you can't run 10 kilometers without using type 1 muscle fibers. However, if you're doing something like jumping up for a header or doing a quick sprint down the line, you're going to need your type 2 muscle fibers because it's a power movement. So football is a little bit of an interesting one. Sorry, if we go back, when you download these slides, click the star, shows you the fiber types and how they influence a marathon runner and a weightlifter. Right, there's a lot of key terminologies. Here's an example of some, but if I show the table now on the next slide, it'll be easier, so do it all as one. But this table, what I wanted you to do in class was basically tell me high, medium or low or reverse or whatever. So you need to know what these terminologies mean at first. So all these terminologies are on my Quizlet. So like I've told you before, go on your Quizlet, practice these terminologies. Capillary density. What capillaries are blood vessels. So obviously your blood vessels are going to carry blood and oxygen towards the working muscles, so energy for the muscles. Your type 1, we've already said, it's a slow oxidative fiber, so it needs a lot of oxygen. Therefore, the capillary density is going to be really high for that fiber type. Type 2A is going to be medium, type 2B because it's a power type, it doesn't use oxygen, so it would be low. The mitochondria density. Mitochondria is used for respiration. So respiration, you're thinking oxygen. Exactly the same for capillary density. So high, medium, low, because it's to do with oxygen. So anything we see on this table to do with oxygen, it's going to be high for your type 1 muscle fiber types. Now triglyceride, what triglyceride is fat. It's a fat molecule. Now fat is a really effective fuel for the body. 1 gram of fat will give you 9 kilocalories of energy. However, we need an awful lot of oxygen to break down our fat. If we need a lot of oxygen, think about your type 2B fibers. If you're doing like a 100-meter sprint, it's over in 10 seconds if you're world class. You've not got time to use oxygen to break down the triglyceride stores, so that'll be low for type 2B. Running a marathon, so a world class marathon runner is going in about 2 hours, just over 2 hours. You're going to have lots of time to be able to utilize your fat stores, so you'll have a lot more triglyceride stores for your type 1 fibers and very few for your type 2B. And glycogen is completely different. Glycogen is instant energy stored within the body. Therefore, if it's readily available, we need lots of glycogen for our type 2B, so it would be high, and it would be low for type 1. Resistance to fatigue. Fatigue means, excuse me, getting tired, not being able to perform any longer. So type 1, lots of oxygen, can go for a long time. They got high resistance to fatigue, whereas your type 2B has a low resistance. Twitch type is just slow, fast, fast. Aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic means with oxygen, anaerobic means without oxygen. So obviously type 1 is aerobic, is with oxygen, and type 2B is anaerobic, is without oxygen. Myoglobin. So I said to you in the video lesson 1, we'd revisit myoglobin. Now, myo means muscle. So myoglobin is like hemoglobin within the muscle. Hemoglobin or myoglobin is a protein which binds to oxygen. It has a high affinity for oxygen, so it binds to oxygen and can take it into the muscle so it can use it as a fuel. Therefore, type 1 will have a high myoglobin density. Type 2 will have a low. Size of the motor unit. So if you think about it, your type 2B muscle fibers are really strong, fast contractions, so it's a big motor unit, whereas it's a lot smaller for your type 1. And then your fibers per motor units, you can have between 10 and 180 for your type 1. That's because they're not such a powerful muscle contraction. They're more looking for a high resistance fatigue. Whereas if you're looking at your type 2s, you've got between 300 and 800. 800 is more than 4 times more than the type 1. Think of the extra power and strength you're going to get from that. Then sporting examples, we've got triathlon, 400-meter sprinter, and 100-meter sprinter. All right, Usain Bolt case study. So you should consider this for a type 1 athlete, a type 2A athlete, and a type 2B. So I've got a type 2B Usain Bolt. So this was actually a study task I set you before you went to Sealyham. So what I wanted to know is what muscle fiber type does Usain Bolt use? Okay, he uses a 2B. It's obvious. So why does he utilize this fiber type? Okay, so think about the characteristics of his sport. He ran his world record in 9.58 seconds. Therefore, he needs fast, powerful contractions because it's over in under 10 seconds, so it's going to be a 2B. Also, think of that power he needs to get the block. So he's starting low and he has to get to maximum velocity as quick as possible. Everything is related to power. Now, what I wanted you to do is consider the characteristics of the fiber type. So if you were to look at the table again, I want to know all the things which help his performance. So for example, 100 meters is about going as fast as you can. So you need a fast fiber. It has to be a fast twitch type. Otherwise, it's not going to help. We need big motor units because we need to recruit many muscle fibers because we want them all firing and contracting as fast and as hard as they can so we can run as fast as we can. And due to that, we need a large motor unit. Speed of contraction, like I said, has to be fast. Otherwise, we're not going to win the race. Now, this is important because it's so fast, we don't have time to use oxygen as a fuel. We cannot have triglyceride stores as our main energy source. It just won't work. We haven't got time to break them down. We need lots of glycogen, lots of simple sugars, which are there ready to use quickly because we're only going for 10 seconds. Therefore, that is what makes this muscle fiber type, perfect for Usain Bolt. However, if we're going to analyze this, we need to think what the implications would be if he was to use another fiber type. So why wouldn't he use it? Why would it be bad for his performance? So if Usain Bolt was to use a type 1, we can already see it's a slow twitch, so it's not going to be able to run as fast because it's slow. He's got a small motor unit and less fibres. Naturally, by having less fibres, he's got less than 4 times the amount of fibres that type 2B fibre type has. That is nowhere near good enough for him. If he wants to run as fast as he can, and even if he's got 180 fibres, compared to 800, that is nowhere near enough for him to run as fast as he can. He's not going to run 9.58 seconds utilising type 1. Look at triglyceride stores, mitochondrial density, capillary density is all high. It's all to do with using oxygen to help break down the fuel. So type 1s are all about getting as much oxygen in as possible so we can break down those fat molecules. As I said, fat molecules need a lot of oxygen. He will not be able to intake that amount of oxygen and have the time to metabolize his fat to be able to run quickly. Therefore, he won't have as much energy if he's using type 1 because there's low glycogen stores there. Yeah, granted his resistance to fatigue is high, but who cares? If he's running for less than 10 seconds, you can run for as quick as you can for 10 seconds. Granted, you feel tired afterwards, but you can maintain top speed for 10 seconds. These are the reasons type 1 fibre type isn't suitable. What I would do is go through each one consistently and talk about it and make sure you relate it to the sport. So, for example, look at different phases. Let's look at the start, for example. Start needs to be quick, needs to be rapid. Otherwise, if he's not in contention by the end of the start, he's not probably going to win the race because there's not enough time. By using a small motor unit and having a slow speed of contraction, it's going to get him at the blocks very slow. And he could be in last place already. If he's in last place, say 10, 20 metres into the race, out of his driving phase, he is not going to win that race. So it's going to be detrimental to his performance. And these are things you need to consider when analysing different fibre types.